The Architect of Silence, Why I Stopped Paying for the Family Script. The sound of a heavy vault door closing isn't nearly as loud as the silence that follows a 30-year-old lie. Imagine waking up to realize you aren't the hero of your own life, but the secret benefactor of everyone else's. For 3 decades, I was the reliable one, the one who didn't need a map because I was the one building the roads for everyone else to walk on. But 3 weeks ago, I sent a single 6-word email that didn't just burn a bridge, it deleted the entire map. I'm going to tell you exactly how I dismantled a legacy of manipulation, and why the most dangerous person in a family isn't the one who screams, but the one who finally stops saying yes. It started in a town where the fog doesn't just roll in, it stays. Blackwood Bay. It's the kind of place where the houses are Victorian, the secrets are generational, and the property taxes are high enough to keep the wrong sort out. My family home, a sprawling estate called the Gables, sat at the highest point of the cliff. It was beautiful, but if you looked closely at the foundation, you'd see the cracks. My parents, Arthur and Eleanor, were masters of the calculated appearance. Everything had to be perfect. The lawn, the linens, the legacy. But perfection is expensive, and in Blackwood Bay, if you aren't moving forward, you're sinking into the salt marsh. For years, I watched my father pace the study, his face a mask of dignified panic, while my mother curated a social life they could no longer afford. My name is Elias. I'm an architect. I spend my days designing structures that can withstand the weight of the world, which is ironic, considering I spent my entire life trying to be the pillar holding up a collapsing family. Growing up, I was the easy child. My sister Clara was the artist, which was family code for expensive and volatile. She needed private tutors, specialized camps, and later, creative sabbaticals in Europe. I, on the other hand, got a scholarship to Cooper Union and worked 3 jobs to pay for my materials. I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't. I loved my family. I loved the way my mother's face lit up when she told her friends about my genius designs. I felt like the protector. I was the silent engine keeping the lights on at the Gables, funneling nearly 40% of my salary into a family maintenance fund that I believed was for the estate's taxes and repairs. I thought I was being a son. I didn't realize I was being a ghostwriter for a story I wasn't allowed to read. But that wasn't the strangest part. The shift happened on a Tuesday. I was at my firm, finishing the blueprints for a new museum, when I received a notification from the joint account I shared with my father for the estate. A withdrawal of $85,000. Not for taxes, not for the roof. The recipient was a firm called Vanderbilt and Finch. I knew that name. They weren't contractors, they were high-end event planners. I called my mother. The Gables needs a new roof, Elias, she said, her voice like silk. We're hosting the Centennial Gala. It's for the family name. You want the family to be respected, don't you? Something felt off. The roof didn't cost $85,000, and the Centennial Gala was months away. What happened next made everything worse. I decided to drive up to Blackwood Bay unannounced. I told myself I was just checking on the construction. When I arrived, there were no contractors, no scaffolding. Instead, the house was filled with strangers in suits. They were measuring the windows for silk drapes and discussing the flow of the ballroom. I found Clara in the garden. She looked radiant, holding a glass of vintage champagne. Isn't it wonderful, Elias? She beamed. The launch is finally happening. The launch? I asked. The Clara Street James Foundation, she said, as if I should already know. Dad said you were so proud of me that you wanted to fund the entire first year of my gallery. He said you called it your investment in the family genius. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't said that. I hadn't authorized a foundation. I was paying for a roof that didn't exist to fund a vanity project I was never told about. And that's when the story took a darker turn. I didn't confront them right then. I'm an architect. I know that if you want to see how a building fails, you have to look at the load-bearing walls. I went into my father's study while they were at dinner. I found the ledger. But I didn't just find receipts for Clara's foundation. I found the original deeds to the Gables. The house hadn't been in my father's name for 15 years. It had been in mine. My grandfather had left the estate to me directly when I turned 18, bypassing my father because he knew Arthur's business ventures were a black hole. But my father had forged my signature on a management agreement when I was a teenager, a document that gave him total control over the assets while I remained the sole legal owner, and the one responsible for every cent of debt he was racking up in my name. I wasn't just funding their lifestyle. I was the legal shield for a mountain of fraud. If the foundation failed, if the taxes weren't paid, the bank wouldn't come for Arthur. They would come for me. The hidden truth was breathtaking in its cruelty. My parents hadn't just used my money, they had gambled my entire future to keep up an appearance for a town that didn't even like them. I didn't scream. I didn't break the fine china. I went back to the city and met with a forensic accountant and a very expensive lawyer. The reveal was shocking even to me. My father hadn't just been prioritizing Clara. He had been using the family maintenance fund to pay off personal debts to people who didn't use banks. The Centennial Gala was a front to lure in new investors for a real estate scheme that was already underwater. They weren't just using my college money or my salary. They were using my identity as a hollowed-out vessel to hold their failures. 3 weeks ago, I sent the email. I revoked the management agreement. I froze the accounts, and I put the Gables on the market. The fallout was immediate. My mother called me a traitor to my blood. My sister told me I was stifling her soul. My father simply said, "You don't understand the pressure of being us." I told him, "I do now, because I'm the the one who just ended it. The gables sold yesterday. The silk drapes were never hung, and the Clara Street James Foundation never saw a single painting. My parents are living in a small apartment 2 towns over. It's modest, it's honest, and for the first time in their lives, it's actually paid for by the remaining equity I chose to give them, rather than the lifestyle they chose to steal. I lost a family, but I found my own foundation. I used to think my job was to build things that last. Now I know that sometimes the most important thing an architect can do is recognize when a structure is too toxic to save. And after decades of silence, the truth finally surfaced, and I finally learned to breathe in the quiet.